World Learning. Okay. And I would like to welcome some opening remarks from the CEO of World Learning, Carol Jenkins. Carol, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Nikos. It's wonderful to be here with all of you, and thank you to everyone who's joining online. This is a wonderful opportunity for us as an organization. I'm based here out of Washington, D.C., which is where the group is gathered. But again, welcome to everyone, wherever you are in the world. Wonderful to be here. What I'm going to do is maybe pull back out a little bit from these very amazing remarks that Nikos just provided us, share a little bit with you about the history of how World Learning embraces the kinds of work that you are doing, the important work that you're doing, and also how the DCN has evolved over these years. So let me just say that we've been partnered with this initiative since 2015, and your work is really at the heart of what World Learning has done for more than 90 years. Our founder, Donald Watt, believed that if people live together from across cultures, borders, states, or families, communities, schools, if people lived together from different religions or countries, they could learn to understand each other. He believed that if people shared a meal, sang a song together, planted a garden together, whatever it might be, people could move beyond their differences and create peaceful, long-lasting connections. The vision that he had, he named the Experiment in International Living, which is the flagship, the original name of our organization. And over these 90 years, we've come to understand that we have to do even more to find ways to engage. Just has been shared with all of us. The world is so accessible. Information, data, photos, news, ideas can be shared in so many ways. And physical proximity that was so important to the vision of our founder is sometimes now a luxury. Hence, we've got probably more people engaging with us online that are actually here in the room today. And as you all know better than most, information can be used for good, and it can be also very destructive. So our organization continues to embrace our founder's belief in the idea of the experiment in international living, but we have a greater realization. We must embrace the experiment in international learning. How can we truly understand each other in a world rampant sometimes with untethered truths? DCN is one such important way. You are learning together. That's the plan, that's the vision that you just heard about, to find ways to discern from fiction, for example. Let me give you just a little bit of the history about DCN. As I said, it was founded in 2015, and it was formed under the Leaders Lead on Demand program, which was a rapid response professional exchange program for emerging leaders worldwide. It was sponsored and funded by the U.S. Department of State and managed by World Learning. And what that program intends to do is to support the U.S. State Department's ability to quickly respond to global events that affect U.S. policy and diplomacy. Since then, DCN has brought together leaders, Lead on Demand alumni, who are media and communications professionals, to share digital content and tools and how best to strengthen independent journalism and counter disinformation. Many different kinds of topical forums have been organized on various subjects. And over the past few years, the DCN has expanded with partnerships with media, civic, tech, and educational organizations adding to this membership. New hubs are being created under the umbrella of DCN Global. There are incubators for professionals seeking local support. And I want to emphasize that local support, just as you said, is critical information and networking. DCN's platforms and tools are critical resources to help policymakers and governments as well. And if you didn't realize that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken touted DCN's approach to this goal last year, and he said this: the strength of DCN is in the diversity and flatness of the network that's been created. It doesn't try to prescribe one single solution, but it makes it easier for participants to learn from one another's responses, whether through webinars or trainings, online learning hubs, or research exchanges, and even through games and apps. So let me just close by saying, while combating disinformation is the goal, it's also the spirit of exchange, the exchange of people, ideas, and information. That's also at the heart of DCN. I want to thank you for all that you're doing. I want to let you know again, we support you and are doing as much as we can to express that support in various ways, because we really believe this is about experimenting together and learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, I would like to thank CEO Carol Jenkins for her insightful comments and for the support that we have from World Learning in actually to be able to develop these capacities. And as we have said, that better results comes through networks and coalitions. Now we will move to our next panel. I think that we are right on time, so we should highlight that. Despite that you have an academic in the panel that would like to speak a lot. So we will move on to the next panel, that it is regarding truth and democracy. We will actually provide a global perspective of what DCN is about. It will be moderated by Marisela Zamora Villalobos, which is head of DCN Americas Costa Rica. And the panelists will be online, Aribowo Sasmito, which is a founder of MAFINDO from Indonesia. It's a well-known organization in Asia and well-respected for their work. Filimon, president from Forum Apulum, Romania, as well as member of DCN Global Board. Aurra, which is the digital influencer, head of DCN Africa from Zimbabwe. Aurra, thank you. Well, Alexandre Voci, which is director, Education, Media and Culture, co-chairman of UNESCO Meal Alliance from Brazil. And Yulia Reshitko from Ukraine, she's online as well. Yulia is member of the board as well, senior communication consultant for anti-corruption in Ukraine. And John Greenberg, which is a senior correspondent for PolitiFact in the US. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you, Nikos, and thank you everybody for being here. As Nikos said, my name is Marisela Zamora, and I will be moderating this panel. That we have a very diverse perspectives of the world. So access to knowledge and information give power to people. We can create sense of the world and find narratives of change, and most important, the vision of where we want to go as society. We live in a continual conflict between the kind of experts of truth and the more populist, everyday, common sense truth that supposedly stems not from expert, but the wisdom of the crowd. We don't want to have one definite source of truth. Ideas evolve and culture change. We are constantly debating what is truth, and especially how the concept of democracy should evolve in order to respond to civil society. As Nico was saying, we have a lot of challenges because we hear a lot of, oh, people don't care about the truth, or how do we know what's truth, or where does this information coming from? Or we hear people don't care about democracy anymore as long as their problems are solved. However, I keep asking myself, are we evolving the concept of democracy to meet people's needs without getting in the dangerous zone of being a populist? Are we thinking about the ways of how democracies should address post-truth, the post-truth era, and this overload of information that we're facing? Social media, AI, and internet more broadly have clearly had, rather than a revolutionary effect, they have had a revolutionary effect on people, but also we tend to not trust everything that circulates, and that's very sad because we lost the trust, and people don't feel engaged to be part of something bigger, of a society of countries. But how do we, this give us the possibilities to create civil society, to create more meaning and to create more about democracy. The aspiration for knowing more and getting closer to truth and a never-ending process of construction of the meaning of democracy is alive. And with the voices that we have here in this panel, we have a global perspective of how we can just keep building on the concept of democracy and, of course, just keep thinking about what is truth and how we can make it together. So we're starting with Aribowo Sasmito. He is online, and he's the founder of MAFINDO from Indonesia. So please, Aribowo, go ahead. They have 5 minutes each, and then we will have, I think we will have some minutes for questions. So
if you could speak louder, or
yes,
for our online participants, that
sure,
would be great.
Sure, yes. Thank you, Mariana. So go ahead, Aribowo.
Good evening, Jakarta time, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good day to whatever time zone you are right now. Unfortunately, I don't prepare any slideshow, but it's more like going to add another problem that has been previously presented by Nikos. Another problem would be the death of expertise era, where people who are actually experienced and expert in their area are easily refuted by people who think they are more expert than the actual expert. Like, for example, during the infodemic, a lot of experts are actually refuted whenever they're trying to correct or refute the misinformation, like even if they are doctors, like for example, at least in Indonesia, but I think this is a global phenomena that whenever something happens, instant expert who often provide conspiracy theories are often to be more believed than instead of the actual expert. And another problem would be the death of expertise has making the matter worse, because it's not just expertise being refuted by these instant experts, but another problem is that in one side it is a transparency. It is important that to keep the dialogue open and public, but the other problem would be the discussion between the expert that's supposed to be kept in a contained or closed forum. These experts are actually discussing it online, which it unfortunately, although it is important to keep the discussion open in social media era, it actually adds more problem to the public, because there is no definitive conclusion provided by the expert. And also another that already presented by Nikos previously, the way how everything is so open these days. TikTok is very popular. Misinformation is moving. Previously, few years ago, just a still image, a photo. But these days, since TikTok is so popular, a lot of misinformation are using video, which technically, if you consider that a video is within 1 second, it consists of 24 up to 24 frames. So this is adding a more challenge, not to mention, previously mentioned also, the AI. Few days ago, everyone in the world is shocked by seeing the picture of Donald Trump being chased by the police, or the Pope is wearing such a cool outfit, and everything is basically generated by AI. And traditionally, fact checkers are refuting, clarifying fake image is by providing the original image. In this case, it is not possible to provide the original image, because the provided image is originally created by the AI itself. Basically, the way how people generate by just providing text, and the AI will learn, and then original quote unquote will be provided by AI. So this is also another harder challenge for the fact checkers. But again, I'm hoping that DCN, World Learning, and everyone in the fact-checking community, and everyone, academics, journalists, and media, we can collaborate. So this is actually a global problem to everyone. The worst problem would be what considered by the platform as the real-world danger, where several countries already experienced it, like previously in US, the attack of the Capitol building. Previously in Indonesia, around the one of the government building, the general election Overwatch party, when we in 2019 we announced the winner of the election, there were a chaos that physically happened, and the last one that actually happened in Brazil, where the supporter of Bolsonaro, they are doing physical riots. So the worst impact by the social media is the real world danger. I think I'm already 5 minutes. Thank you. Maybe over.
Thank you, Aribowo. Now we are going to move to Romania and, well, Central and Eastern Europe. Diana, please go ahead.
Thank you, Marcela. Yeah, I'm the representative of the troubled region, Central and Eastern Europe today. And if I am to sum up the region in this moment, is imagine a building with a lot of problems that the manager didn't know if we should call the plumber to fix the pipes, whatever, and then suddenly a fire starts in one corner of the building, and that fire right now is the war in Ukraine. So when we talk about democracy in this region, what do? Do you ignore the pipes and look at the fire? And maybe when the fire will be over, the pipes will flood everything and you won't be able to live very comfortable in that building? Or do you take care of both? So this is a very, let's say, a casual description of the situation. It's a very troubled time. The pandemic had, like everywhere else, put a big stress on the information and the willingness of people to accept the truth, and the willingness of people to redefine their own truth, which suited their personal comfort. And since the war started, we had to pay less attention to the illiberal democracies in the area, as so fancy, so we don't call them autocracies, and to focus on Ukraine and on saving Ukraine. But that doesn't make the bad guys suddenly become good guys. So we had last year a very triumphant win of the elections in Hungary of Viktor Orban, who is the model of dictatorships in the region, and who has been described by many activists I know as running an informational autocracy, which is a very interesting term, because he doesn't invade your physical existence, but he invades your informational space. And then the civil society, we in Central Europe, we were gathering a few months. They are experts in elections by now. We have in autumn the biggest and most important elections in the region, in Poland. The government is the lesser evil right now when we are talking about Ukraine, but at the same time it pushes very, very hard on the civil society, on the journalists. The most recent incident we had from the disinformation point of view, TVN, a network part of the Discovery Group, which broadcasted the documentary about Pope John Paul II knowing about some abuses in the church, and suddenly the government decided that this television is running a hybrid war in Poland to divide the society. So we have this situation in Poland, and we have the election. And we also have next year in Romania 4 rounds of elections, which are very, very important. And the way from Poland not necessarily will affect. The vibe is not very, very pro-democratic, let's say, in the region. Definitely, pipes, what I'm talking about, the pipes which are running are these cases. And just to show you one example, when the war started, we all thought, okay, so now the region will guys, the bad guys will learn that there are priorities and they should behave better. But in Hungary, but not in practice, 26% 26% of the population believes that the United States are having in European Union and NATO member to believe that that's a success for disinformation. And when the disinformation is run by the government, who's punching the opposition and the journalists who are trying to say the truth, that it's a problem. So since we are at the brainstorming table, the question I'm asking is, how do you deal with the pipes, the fire? How do you prioritize? Do you prioritize? Is something more important and something less important? Will there still be a democracy in Central and Eastern Europe after 2 years from now or 4 years from now if we don't pay attention? And the propaganda in this region is becoming better and better because the war triggers nationalistic issues. For example, in Romania, we haven't talked about borders for I don't know how many years, but now the Russian propaganda is poking and saying your borders, they could be larger in the east. You know, there were some territories who were yours, and this is a discussion who was not there before, but it's here now. So yeah, the pipes or the fire. What do we do? Do we call the plumber first or do we call the firefighter? And I think it's important that we do both because it's an important to stay true to democracy and truth first of all. Definitely peace will come after we stay true to ourselves, but what happens if peace comes and we are already lost? So yeah, this is my thought for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And I think we find a lot of common threads, as Aribowo said, with our regions. So now we're moving to Africa with Aurra. Aurra, please.
Thank you so much, Maricela. My name is Aurra Kawanzaruwa, for those of you wondering how to say my surname. I come from Zimbabwe. I am born, raised, and based on the continent. And today I want to share a little bit about the truth and democracy perspective in Africa. Now, one thing that makes Africa stand out from the rest of the world is that we've been probably the world's greatest resource in terms of the highest lithium deposits in the world, in terms of gold, in terms of diamond, in terms of oil. We have a lot of resources on the continent. And so because of that, a lot of truth and democracy on the continent is based on geopolitics. That is what influences how governments operate. It is very, very dependent on who is spending the most money and who is buying the resources. Africa, for a long time, has been trying to dig itself out of a hole. As such, we're very divided, don't really have much of a united stance as a continent, although that is improving. So with that context, looking at truth and democracy, specifically, let's start with truth. Truth is a challenging one on our continent because a lot of media houses on our continent are owned, for example, by the state. So you have controlled information across all countries on the continent. In 2019 alone, there was a report by Top 10 VPN that about 12 African governments shut down internet. Would black out internet anytime something that was happening in the country maybe would have put the country in a bad light to the global stage. So internet blackouts are very common. Those 12 countries in 2019 alone, it cost economies, the African economy, $2 billion just shutting down the internet. Internet could be shut down anything down to from a week to 3,500 days, depending on the severity of what was happening on that continent. Media censorship is very common across most governments. This includes arresting journalists, both professional journalists and citizen journalists, abductions, silencing, controlling what is said, having the media boards double check, triple check, quadruple check everything that you write before you put it out. And because we can't really control what people put on the internet, the easiest thing is close the internet. The second thing around democracies is elections. Elections on the continent are often, I call it a popcorn session for the global north. It's more of a reality for us, but it's quite entertaining, for lack of a better word, to watch from the outside looking in. It's a different story for the people living on the ground. Election fraud, rigging, manipulation, especially using technology, all right, like BVR systems, the more technical sort of forms of elections, less manual. You have people who prefer manual systems of elections because they're easier to control. Because the moment anything involves technology, someone can hack it, someone can scrutinize it. You have a lot of brilliant young people who understand how to use technology, and they can take it apart. So electoral fraud is still a big hurdle on the continent. Constitutional coups are also quite common and probably one of the biggest challenges because it's a manipulation of the constitution to extend a leader's term. It can be through changing the age, it can be through changing how long the president can be in term for, and this is also something seen quite common across the continent. But it's not all doom and gloom. I believe that Africa is on the come up, but the come up is being led by young people. So the role of civil society and social media, exposing abuses of power and mobilizing citizens for change, has played a really big role in revolutionizing the way Africa's truth and democracy looks. So, for example, a case study I'll give you is Nigeria. In 2020, the EndSARS campaign was started by young people, primarily on Twitter and Instagram. This garnered a complete global rally around Nigeria. And the biggest actors in that were the Nigerian diaspora, who then also engaged Nigerian celebrities, who then were able to influence their international communities to bring attention to the EndSARS campaign. If you're wondering what SARS means, it's the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. And it was very notorious in terms of police brutality. But because of that, there was a lot of rallying around it, and SARS was actually brought to an end. This was all born from Twitter and Instagram, pushed by young people. Another case study is also Malawi. Malawi was also through the internet as well, young people protesting on the internet, contesting the presidential rerun in 2019, and they were actually able to rerun the elections all because of attention that was drawn to it on social media. So social media and young people play a really, really big role in terms of shifting the complexion of truth and democracy on the continent. And I mean, we have success stories. We have South Africa, which is considered a role model in terms of democracy on the continent. There's an MIT political scientist called Evan Lieberman, who wrote a book, Until We Have Won Our Liberty, who looks at South Africa in the past 25 years post-apartheid. As you know, South Africa was probably one of the last countries to come out of a colonial type setup, and that was in 1994. And looking at it since then, it's had the most increases and most changes in terms of really engaging in democratic processes. So those are really great. And other such stories that have defied the odds in terms of how Africa operates are countries like Benin, Botswana, Ghana, Namibia, Mauritius, Senegal, and recently Zambia. And all these processes, all these changes are actually fueled by social media. They're fueled by young people. So there's a huge shift happening on the continent where power has come back to the people. And tools like AI, tools like understanding how the internet works, websites, analytical data has really revolutionized the way young people engage with governments and hold governments to account. So that's a little bit about our content.
Thank you, Aurra, for that hopeful remarks. And I think that gives us a lot of hope. And I would love to say the same about youth in Latin America, now that we're going to our region. Sadly, it's not happening, but I think there are some people who just find the ways to come together and just try to reinvent how to engage with governments. So for this, we're going to talk with Alexandre from Brazil.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, all of you. I'm wearing several hats here this morning, but I'll try to use my UNESCO hat and my DCN hat to mix it up, blend it, to bring a perspective for you. Actually, when we talk about truth, the first question that came is who decides what is truth? And this is the core, the central aspect of what we are talking here today. For example, in Latin America, this question is being used to mine, to erode democracy. When we see democracy, it's been seen there as a process with no value by itself anymore. When you see countries playing chess with the world with no democracy in getting places of and getting good places, that people say, why democracy is about? I think it's better to live under an autocracy or something like that, under a dictatorial government. So to bring up the values, the basic values of democracy and the basic values of our life, that we're talking with Mr. Greenberg here, we must check it out that truth is related with evidence-based facts and science. And this is where the crises are in Latin America, and it started all this process with government in Latin America. It's a crisis of information, journalism, who provides it, and it's a crisis of the scientists and the science itself that is not communicating to everyone the way it should be. At the base of that, my perspective is always from education. So it's this why we used to say that media education and media literacy is one for fighting and for tackling disinformation all around the world, and mainly in Latin America. I will bring you a perspective of Latin America, which is a very complex media ecosystem. For instance, 75%, first of all, we are talking about 33 countries in Latin America, which includes the Caribbean too. And so it's very diverse scenario and very diverse social background, political background. But in common, sorry, I'll speak louder. But in common, we have that there's one research that shows that 75% of the population down there were informed of the pandemic by the traditional media, television. So which means that we are talking about old mediations like TV and radio. If you talk about the natives in Amazon, you take about cities that are isolated, not close to big cities. We are talking about radio, FM radio still. But at the same time, AI is knocking on our door, with everyone's door. So we have problems of access to the internet, and we have problems at the same time of the quality of the information we are dealing with. I used to call AI, I think Dimitris will go deep on that, as a new mediation between the human being and the world. It's important to think that the theories of mediation like Frankfurt School doesn't work with AI anymore, because in another perspective, we have the situation of opacity of algorithms, lack of transparency, what's going on, and we need to understand that to understand the information we are consuming. So, for instance, there are a lot of, if you talk about regulation as a solution, mainly by government, this is a tricky thing, because again, you're thinking, who said what is true? And we have experience in Latin America of governments trying to regulate truth, and it was disaster, completely disaster. Maybe Chile was the only one who've done it in a regular way. But what I think here is part of public policies, part of the government role to control the situation. But it's, as Nikos said at the beginning, an ecosystem as a systemic view of activities that can deal with disinformation and democracy. And I can underline media education from the lifelong learning, public policy in the European Union. I like this from the cradle to the grave. They start in the kindergarten, and it's just we finish that in the end of the high school. So it's very important. Yeah, ground zero It's very important. In Latin America, we are not even starting with this discussion of AI ground zero regulatory marks. So it's important. We are reviewing, some countries are reviewing the ground zero internet because of the, if you don't regulate social platform, we need to decide who is responsible for those who is, need to review this article during the internet regulation. And that, but the processes we know in journalism that needs to be expanded to everyone with information, with checking, with rechecking, with interviewing, checking all the sources, not only one source. I think truth is a process and truth is multiple. So you need to take evidence for everything, for every part. And one thing that I must underline is that only fact-checking, which sounds good and works good, but only fact-checking is not enough. Fact-checking is not a synonym of a remedy or something to defeat disinformation. It's one part of the entire system. It's just one part. It's important, but not enough. We are full of fact-checking agencies in Brazil, and you see what happened. People who are more scholarized, more time in school, tend to believe in fact-checking, but those who are not, who didn't went to school, access to public education, tend to not believe in fact-checking, tend to reinforce their own beliefs. So it's part of this. We need to begin with a little bit of everything and try to make this full ecosystem. Just to underline that transparency and accountability within this process is very important. We had a bad experience in some countries who tried to impose social control over television 10 years ago, but the process was not clear to the population. So they tried to import some models from Europe, but it was not transparent for the society. How can we make it transparent and participative now with internet and AI as well? So I could talk here for more 2 hours, but I will save your time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alexandre. Now we're moving again to Central and Eastern Europe with Julia Reshitko, that she is online. So please go ahead, Julia.
Thank you, Maricela. Good morning, everyone, and good day and good evening to all of you watching us online. My name is Yulia Reshitko, and I'm a communication specialist here from Kyiv, Ukraine, where I'm now. And actually, thank you very much for the opportunity provided for me to speak to you today. It is very important actually to include Ukraine into the topic in terms of democracy and truth, because we have a lot of different things, but also a lot of common things with those you've spoken about right now. And actually, to sum it up a little bit, for instance, Diana was talking about the elections. Of course, in Ukraine, we will not have any kind of elections during the wartime. However, afterwards, and I hope it would be like in a year or so, we will see, of course, the elections will be very hard in Ukraine as well, because despite the fact that nowadays our society is very united because we know what we are doing, we are fighting the enemy, and that's why we have like not enough time to be, I don't know, to be in a quarrel or to fight one another, but afterwards this society will be very much polarized in terms of language to speak, because probably you know that in Ukraine, like half of people used to speak Ukrainian, half of them Russian, and nowadays it is a very like harsh question of what to speak, and then also cultural aspects, historical aspects, and not even mentioning political aspects. That's why, of course, Ukrainian society will be polarized, and I'm sure we will have lots of challenges to face after the war. Moreover, I would like to agree with Alexandre about the fact checking that is not enough, because actually in the eve of the war, we had a photo circulated on Facebook depicting our soldiers on the front line. And the post itself was telling the readers that this is a football team fighting for Ukraine. But the truth was that they were not the footballers, but just ordinary soldiers. However, fact checkers pointed this content as a false one, but it's not truly the false. It was like misled, but not false. That's why, yeah, we need to add more context to the situation. And truth is the thing that should be, how to say, how to probably stress, it should be also armed with technologies as well. If to zoom out a little bit about the Ukrainian context, you all know that we all are fighting here for democracy, but Ukraine is not the only country fighting for democracy nowadays, and it is true. However, we are a comparatively young country. We will turn 32 this year. However, the truth is that as a nation, we had 1,100 years of history deriving from Kievan Rus, with the heart in Kiev, Ukraine. And for instance, it was founded long before our enemy's capital, Moscow. That's why we probably also need to tell more truth about ourselves, because like last century, we had very little chance to speak out loud with the truth as Ukrainians, because for 70 years, we were like a colony. We were occupied by the Soviet Union as an empire. And nowadays we can also compare. We do not use this kind of language like a colonialism in Europe. However, if to compare it, it will sound very alike for other nations, for instance, as Aurra mentioned, Africa. So our battle right now, it is a battle against being a colony and against autocracy as well. The revolution of dignity Ukraine had in the year of 2013 and 14 showed the globe, and probably like mostly the Europe, but I will mention the globe also, that we are not going to have autocracy in Ukraine. We would not like choose it deliberately. That's why in Ukraine we now are fighting the perspective to be forcibly joined to the totalitarian, authoritarian, like if you like, country. And to sum it up also, I would like to mention that really all the tools like AI, OSINT, and all the possible tools for good, how to say, media, good investigators are also used against us. And it is very much important that we find a way how to arm the truth so that it is spoken out loud and it is accepted and thought around the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. So now, last but not least, we have Mr. John Greenberg from PolitiFact, USA. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me here. Great group of people you've brought together. And I'm a policy wonk, right? So give me a spreadsheet and I'm happy as a pig in slop, as we say. And I will be the first to tell you that fact checking is not enough. I do think that we need to set our expectations appropriately, and that is that don't expect fact checking to change minds. I do think it has an invisible effect, and that is it strengthens people's resolve. It represents a set of values that will, when people see it, they say, oh, I am not alone. And I think that that is probably its greatest strength. But absolutely, it's not enough. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the American context because of what we are as a country. You guys have read a lot about us, and I don't think I need to explain and pontificate or be a pundit about what's going on in America. I will say this, that the results of the past two elections show that while we have a very strong number of people, a strong fraction that are populist, that are anti-elitist, and have a whole set of values that run against, relying on evidence-based decisions, at the end of the day, we have seen that we have a overall, it's going to change from place to place, but overall, we have a slightly larger fraction of people who say, no, enough of that stuff, right? I'm not buying it. It's disruptive. Let's move on. So I just want to put that out there as a piece of context because we can focus on the negative, but I think we have some electoral evidence that points to the opposite. So in the brief time that I have, and since this is a brainstorming session, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in, and I'm going to jump on Aurra's point. I think that focusing on the younger generation is probably the smartest strategic move that can be made. And if I was going to put this into one phrase, I would say, make truth cool. If you make it hip, if you make it fun, if you make it important, and I'm not saying trivialize it, but I think that that is really important because one of the dynamics that we see in the United States is that people who are under whatever, 40, 35, pick your number, they are different in their perspective than the older people who tend to show up and vote, who tend to dominate our institutions, who look more like me. And they actually are the great resource. If I were going to draw any inspiration, I would actually go back to the movie No. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend that you do. Because it's set in 1988 in Chile, when they had this massive referendum. And it's a movie. It's not absolutely, it didn't capture enough of the union organizing that made a huge difference in that referendum. But it did accurately capture the spirit of the communication device that actually was very important. And let's say as important as the union organizing to carry the day. And wholly insufficient. What we see in the United States, and I suspect elsewhere, is that people are not making decisions based on meat and potatoes, kitchen table issues, we call them. They are making decisions based on a cluster of values, which tend to be of a more traditional religious perspective and tends to be less democratic. And I think that we need to recognize that, and we need to understand that as well as us being clear about what our values are, and let me throw another book out there, a reference for you to check out, The Constitution of Knowledge, written by Jonathan Rauch. And it basically articulates how, as a society, over the past 500 years, call it the time of the Enlightenment, that we have come up with processes by which we define that which is true. We need to understand that, but we don't need to lead with that. What we need to lead with is the big challenge of making truth cool, making it hip, activating young people, because there has to be an emotional pushback to the emotional draw that drives a lot of the populist agenda. So that's pretty quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. And I think storytellers feel very excited about making truth cool. Yes. Well, this is the last intervention. We do have time for any follow-up questions if somebody does have it, or if you want to comment or something. We do have like 5 minutes more. If not, we can continue. No? Good. So I just wanted to close with an initial question that I made, and it's very accurate with what you were saying. It's like how technology, internet, AI, education, communications can give us new possibilities to create next to civil society a new deal on how democracy can be meaningful for the lives of people in the world, and how we can just join this hopeful movement that is happening in the African youth, and I want to say in some part of Latin America, to make it global, and we can create new meaning. Because I believe this is very personal, that as societies evolve, all the concepts should evolve as democracy. And this open mind to just bring new people, and these people having leadership positions also. We were talking about Brazilian election yesterday, and how we can just have new leaders there, and just feel like in Costa Rica and some other countries in Latin America, we feel we see same people over and over and over again in leadership positions. And this is one of the things that maybe some young people feel like, oh, I can't be part of that because that's for other people, it's not for me. So how can we create and foster new leaderships to be in those positions? Thank you so much to every panelist that we have today. We learned a lot to the ones that were online, and I pass the floor to Nick.
And I pass the floor to the coffee break.
Today's coffee outside.
I was like, you make it cool.
I know, I saw you. I said, like, I got you. Don't worry. And we were
I left them essentially.
Hello, sorry.
I need to gather it. Assuming that we now. Then like copy and email it, and then also double check if you send the link to like an online form or something.
Plotting is on one axis, the age.
Oh yeah, it's been a month.
The other axis.
Yeah. The last day I was in
to inoculate on that layer over specific.
Great, it was amazing. I'm tired.
Were you beautiful? No, absolutely. Because I mean, obviously, not every tool can be used in every context, but understanding, you know, what.
I have
So, the moment that all questions.
That is one of the ways.
Yes, I mean, it's very, I also, I do think that people
It's more like a presentation. It's supposed to be highlight.
by the time they, you know, oh, careful, because as we were saying there, you know.
Our aunties.
Exactly.
We always talk about that.
Yes, yeah, aunties, grandma, you know.
Yes, it's like they send you, it's like, no, this is not true. Please send this message again.
Thank you so much.
This is
Okay. Του έδωσα λέω το κλικ και αυτό το... Ναι, ναι, όλα καλά.
No, I got it.
Can we start? Now we're moving to our next speaker, Franek Wiakorska. Franek has been actually the founding member of DCN Global. We have said that word many times during the
Many times. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to Ordorian for hosting us, of course, and thanks to my dear Deacon. We are trying to expand our activities, but in my and I will try to show activism of digital technologies and the democratic changes. So because before we were focusing more on the journalism, on media, on speech, propaganda, I will show the role of digital and truth in general, changes in the protests, uprising that took place in 2020 and continue until this day. Belarus is often called as the communism with a taste of cappuccino. The very Soviet regime, KGB detaining people every day, in front of McDonald's, beautiful coffee shops, everything which usually our minds connected to the Western civilization. Somehow, the regime of Lukashenko, he managed to create this mixed reality of the totalitarian past with some elements of the modern, free, capitalist society. But in 2020, it became evident that this is just a fake. This is just an imitation of the modern society. The truth is that this totalitarian system, if it's still in the core of the society, in the critical moment, it will take over. And in 2020, when hundreds of thousands of Belarusians are surprised, the totalitarian system, which was hiding behind the cappuccino, it just rised and break down and stifled everything that uprised. Lukashenko, for I hope it will now. It will not change anymore. So you see, it's like the communism forever. So I'm here. It doesn't change. Yo. So it works. We are back. So this. Can I leave it here then? Yeah. Lukashenko, the dictator, he was creating the parallel. And for many people, if the movie Goodbye Lenin, so this Soviet reality, which not because they they were young, they were children, and the connection, the memories from the Soviet past are good. And Lukashenko was playing with these memories, trying to idea that communism in 21st century is possible. And by Lenin, it's a famous German movie when a young guy was trying to keep
her relative, her family member safe by creating the fake reality. Already Germany has changed, democracy came, but he was trying to fake the reality, trying to pretend that nothing has changed. So this is what's happening in Lukashenko. The world was changing, context was changing, but through the media, propaganda, he was keeping the society in the feeling that still the Soviet Union is around. But with the modern technologies, with the social media, with the internet revolution, it became impossible to keep people in this myth because people, society was changing, countries around Belarus were changing, and the propaganda, traditional propaganda, like you see military unit when I was in the army, on the border with Ukraine 10 years ago, this traditional propaganda through TV didn't work because people found out that reality outside of Belarus is much more colorful. And they started to think and to cling on the West more and more, which led to hundreds of thousands of Belarusians. I hope the slide will change. Yes, went to the street. This revolution of 2020, it's a revolution of, some people call it women revolution, internet revolution, telegram revolution. It was spectacular by technologies, it was by influencers, not by big and powerful media, but on who just sharing their thoughts, writing about alternative future for Belarus, and the regime didn't manage to control them because the regime was always targeting big media, big organizations, big political parties, but the smallest were always out of focus. Smaller digital activists and influencers. And before 2020, these small groups, these influencers united in one network and started to coordinate, to exchange experiences and exchange the content. And finally, they created the strongest network, which basically allows people to gather together. And all these protests, all the activities, even the fundraising for repressed, forbidden, and tortured, it was coordinated through Telegram channels, through YouTubers and Instagrammers. It was just neglected, it was not seen by the regime, and the KGB was not able to control because they never faced it before. Among the people who were repressed, there are DCN members as well. Igor Losik, who is now in prison, sentenced to 15 years of prison. Last week he committed second time the suicide in jail. He is a DCN member and he is one of the founder of this new digital movement of Belarus. He spoke at the DCN events in several countries in Europe we organized. He's not the only, we counted at least 4 DCN members are in prison now, are political prisoners. But Igor Losik's case showed that the regime never forgives. Their goal is to support or spread some of them. And what we do right now, we do campaign worldwide in Europe and the United States for his release and release of all other media workers. More than 60 of them are behind bars right now. What we do in 2020, we basically organize the community, we engage the community, and they created the content. All the foreign journalists were banned in Belarus, deprived of accreditation, so ordinary people became the content creators. We created secure chatbots through which people were able to send information. We created polling, even the directions where the protest column had to go. It was decided democratically through digital technologies, through platforms. People decided where to go today, where we march in tomorrow. So this was pure, direct democracy. And people decided to make the protest peaceful, non-violent. It was not because someone like Svetlana Tikhanovskaya decided you should go peaceful, no, because people decided. And this made this protest and this revolution so beautiful. I can't say it's successful because it's not over yet, it's in process. But the way how people organize themselves, it's spectacular for us, and I think it's a good model for others as well. In 2020, what digital tools we have used to empower people and people's will? First of all, Telegram channels. Of course, Telegram is quite controversial, but in the moment of 2020, it played a significant role because it allows you not just to have person-to-person communication, but also to create easily your own media. Just 2 clicks, and you can have your own channels. And dozens of thousands of small channels appear thanks to Telegram. Now this option is available in other social networks, of course, but on Telegram it was the most useful. Second, the chatbots, which allows you to send information anonymously, so KGB cannot track and identify it. And we explored this tool. We developed several special chatbots for gathering content from the ground, which worked very well. We organized the alternative count of votes through digital technologies. People registered through social media. They proved that they are real voters. And after they voted at the official station, they sent the confirmation, the ballot to alternative vote count. And this is how we knew that more than 70% of Belarusians voted for Tikhanovskaya. It was confirmed by other surveys as well. But this alternative count created the legitimacy to Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, which basically made her the national leader, and she is still such. Bloggers became the leaders. If you see the first detainees in 2020, most of them are bloggers and influencers. Basically, they spark the fire in the society, and only then other social groups joined the movement. Communities. Communities not just by interest, by communities by home, by neighborhood, by city, by town, and the regime was not able to control every community. And after they cracked down on one, next day the new community, the same people moved to another platform, and it created this flexibility of the movement. And memes, humor, this helped us to survive dark times, as always. Also to be able, in the harshest moments, to make jokes, to have fun, to laugh, and also to create satire of the regime, because the regime does not understand the humor, and for people it's the motivational and driving. In 2022, the situation for Belarus has changed. Because the context, geopolitical context has changed. Many people here, last week we spent with Svetlana Tikhanovskaya whole week on the Hill in the State Department, having meetings with the different think tankers. We found out that not many people understand the interconnection between Belarus and Ukraine. That everything that happened in Ukraine, it started actually in Belarus. So Belarus was not just the playground for Putin in testing the repression methods. It was preparation for attacking on Ukraine. The crackdown that started, it was preparation for launching missiles from Belarus territory. And our movement, anti-war movement in 2022, it was also driven by technology. And we hope that it is helping Ukraine right now to win. What we do in digital space? First, we empowered new influencers, many new people, content creators, both in the country and exiles. We helped them to create their own channels, their own media. Hundreds of them are on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, which is controversial here, but just in big groups on daily basis and dozens of thousands from time to time. They counter Russian disinformation, propaganda, they report malign content on social media, but also they attack state institutions. And cyber part resistance. Digital technologies became essential for nonviolent, peaceful, pro-democracy movement in the world. Stop propaganda initiatives. So this is something which we launched in 2020, but now it cooperates with Google. Because Google itself is not able to identify all the malign content, KGB-backed videos, and Stop Propaganda Initiative, which unites thousands of people. They help to identify the content and the user accounts, and Google is blocking after that. Victory Plan, that's also a digital-based initiative. People can submit to this plan, and they receive securely safely the tasks, what they can do for democratic victory in Belarus. 200,000 people subscribed. Some of these people participate in partisan activities. Some of them are distributed. Some is that self-made newspapers. But this is the way to engage people in the atmosphere of total terror, because we are living in the Stalin-like terror, and nothing public, official cannot be done, but through digital technologies, internet spaces. Belarusian Hayum is also interesting project. 30,000 people subscribe. They take pictures of Russian trains, military equipment, Russian soldiers in Belarus. They publish it online. They identify names. And every missile launch, every airplane launch from Belarus, after 5-10 minutes, go to this Telegram channel, go to Ukrainian armed forces, and they are prepared, they are alerted that the explosion or the attack can come to their places. This is, of course, we cannot stop missiles from being launched. We don't have like weapons and such capacity, but we can prevent many people from being in these attacks. Targeting on social media, this is also the new thing. We found out that through instruments of Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Google, we can target very precisely groups of people in Belarus who are never exposed to political content. We started to target military people, because usually they live in one part of the city. We started to target police people, state officials, if we know where they mostly concentrated. And we see direct responses. Many of them contacted us and started to cooperate, at least to share information about the moods within the regime. And believe me, it's a big, huge bravery from their side to be in touch with us in such atmosphere. So targeting, it's a new thing, but we think to invest much more and time and efforts and money into targeted advertising with a very specific messages. And the last point, New Belarus app. Since leadership of Belarus is in exile, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya is in exile, we are trying to build a parallel state on digital platform. People can download the app, they can submit documents for receiving digital ID, and they can become citizens of new democratic Belarus already now. And they can use the services of telemedicine on this digital app. They can receive verification if they need to relocate their business to safe European countries, for example. Lukashenko is trying to kick us out of the country, and we are trying to build a parallel state which will unite both people in exile and people in the country in the digital space. This is how we work. I will stop here. This is a brief snapshot how digital technologies help in democratic processes in Belarus. But the most important to finish, we have to give them with experience. The protest movement, democratic movements, you know, it's like a battery on iPhone. So it can be 5%, 3%, 1%, but we should not let it down. And every time we do something, we charge this. And this is through digital technologies, this charger works much faster. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Franak. I don't know if there are any questions. I'm sorry.
Can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
we operate as an iPhone, not as Xiaomi.
In Russia, the state-controlled media, primarily television, has been very effective long-term since 2014, sending a message primarily to older Russians. And I just wonder, is that a similar dynamic that takes place in Belarus? And the question of how younger generation is living off of Telegram and getting their information that way and trying to bring it to their parents and in some fashion give them a sense that there is another story to be told. Is that the same thing that's going on in right now?
Similar thing, but Russia about only older generation. They created a bunch of content for all possible groups. They have a network of accounts on TikTok, on Instagram. Basically, they attempt to reach everyone, and very often they mimic the independent media, like independent, self-made, grassroots. But when something important happens, like the beginning of the war, they embed, the weaponized message. Russia is right, Nazi are in Kiev, etc., etc. So for us, it's very important to have to quickly identify these new channels and to work with tech companies to block them. Without blocking them, they will be expanded and expanded. And see that the tech companies now are much more eager to cooperate and to block this malign content than before. We can't counter TV because TV is under control of Lukashenko and Putin because it's in a cable. But we can counter propaganda on social media and we can do it much more efficiently. We see in the surveys direct correlation of support for Russia and war with consumption of media. Those who consume television, traditional television, Belarusian and Russian channels, they are eager Russia, or 85-90% categorically against.
Thank you. Yes.
Nonviolent action at USIP, and in that role we had social activists from all over, and we had a lot of challenges in this, in Sudan or Venezuela, with infiltration of bad actors inside movements. We had internet shutdown, security, surveillance. And then also, if you think about hybrid, in-person organizing was also a big challenge because then the security is the same thing. So I'm in the Belarus case, if this, if these were issues. I was before also organizing with against the Syrian Electronic Army, and that was the same thing where they were. I mean, this was in 2012. They were very advanced in countering, and so has there been that the attack back in Belarus, but then also where, separate question, all of this takes a lot of planning and co-design. Where is the knowledge management happening? Is that on Google? Is that on, and where are those secure places where, a campaign is planned or even?
Everything is decentralized, absolutely. So right now we're speaking entirely to Signal, of course, to communicate, to plan, to coordinate. We use for video calls with the people on the ground Zoom, which provides enough security. You send the links in the right way. Unfortunately, the biggest problem is not the safety of the code of technology. He was taken by KGB. He didn't delete the content from his computer and phone, and they basically received the whole database, all communications since 2020, and thousands, up to 8,000 people could be jailed because of him. So we, on our side, took all safety measures, but then something happened with the people, with human factor. Or some people, for example, one activist was convinced to come back to Belarus, because someone wrote her from Belarus, I love you, come back. She believed no one will persecute. She come back and now she received 4.5 years in prison. And also all the access, all the data she had, she knew, is already in hands of KGB. And also if we believe that people who were taken by KGB, they will not tell anything, it's not a guarantee. We see that even the bravest one, strongest people, when they are in hands of the secret services, they are eager to tell everything in order to avoid pressure, torture, repression against their family members. But again, we must take the basic security measures always, but we should pay more attention to the human factor and to educate, explain, train our people, how to deal with this situation, also on a psychological level.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much, Franak, for your insightful presentation and for actually providing an example of how actually democracy is fought and is seeked actually and under very difficult circumstances. I think that we should continue emphasizing and supporting this effort that it is being done in Belgium, because it is more than important, and it is part of what it has been said before of the emphasis that we should give in other dictatorships and autocracies as well, because they constitute a continuum that we should actually fight against. Now we will move at Ms. Devi Nair, which is Associate Director and Associate Fellow from International Security Program of CSIS. The topic of the presentation is cyber disinformation operations and how they undermine the rule of law. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hi. So our team at the Center for Strategic and International Studies looks at how cyber and cyber-enabled disinformation operations undermine trust in democratic institutions, and then we have a specific focus on the US justice system. The way we came to kind of focus on the justice system is because our project director, Suzanne Spalding, she was formerly the Undersecretary of the Department of Homeland Security here at, in the US, and was overseeing the election security measures at DHS during the 2016 election, which is when there was a lot of conversation about Russia trying to use disinformation to undermine the US elections. So coming out of DHS, she was really curious about what are other institutions that might be similarly impacted by these misinformation and disinformation operations. And as I'm sure is no surprise to all of you, the justice system was very much caught in the crosshairs of these larger operations. So I'm going to talk about our specific research looking at the US system, but unfortunately I think a lot of what I'm going to be talking about will resonate with a lot of you in similar situations that are happening in your respective countries. So you can go to the next slide. Thanks. So a few other caveats on this presentation. Our research was looking at how Russia is using disinformation and misinformation, but obviously there's other countries that have used similar playbooks, similar tactics, and of course, there's domestic voices here in the United States that are also amplifying or sometimes starting these various disinformation narratives. The other point that we like to emphasize is that obviously these information operations really do resonate because they're exploiting the weaknesses of our own making in democracy. Our institutions aren't perfect. We have legitimate grievances. But I think as somebody mentioned earlier, when you have kind of half-truths sprinkled in with actual falsities, that's really where disinformation is hard to counter and can really spread rapidly. And then the last thing, of course, is that there are reform advocates that are really trying to push these institutions to be better, but that is definitely not the case with some of these malicious actors that are not trying to push for reform, but instead working to actively undermine the institutions, push this idea that democracy is irrevocably broken. So before I get to the more traditional, social media or traditional media outlets and how that is being used to put information against the courts, one of the things that we really focused on is how actual cyber can be coupled or be a part of information operation. So hacking and leaking of sensitive information, altering of data, preventing access to information, the selective leaking of certain court documents that might show the court is maybe biased or incompetent without kind of that fuller picture. And because of certain reasons, maybe specific to a case or procedure that the court is going through, they might not be able to come out fast enough with the proper information. So one of the things that, and I'll talk about this a bit more later on, but one of the things when we're working with judges and the courts that we really try to emphasize is when you're thinking about your disinformation plans, it has to be kind of a cyber and cyber-enabled disinformation component. You can't think of that or treat them in isolation. Next slide. So one of our big research projects took data that the platforms had put out a few years ago and had been verified by our Senate Intelligence Committee, essentially attributing a bunch of accounts to Russia's Internet Research Agency. One of the stories that kind of immediately got the attention of our project director actually was something that happened back in January 2016 in Germany, the Lisa case, which I think some of you might be familiar with. It was a situation where there was a young woman who claimed that she had been abducted by, she said, Arab refugees, and she had this whole story about what had happened to her, and she came back and had reported this to the authorities. After some questioning, it came out that she was actually at a sleepover at a friend's house. She didn't want her parents to know, and she had made up this entire story. So the charges were, or any sort of case was kind of dropped right then and there. Unfortunately, the story got picked up first by some local channels, then by some Kremlin-backed media outlets that really picked up the story and ran with it, saying that the German government was covering this up. They were sweeping the details under the rug. It really got people agitated and actually ended up bringing some people out to protest against, what is this atrocity that the government is carrying out, and what is the justice system in Germany doing in this particular case. That's a bigger situation, but when you come to the United States, we had even stories later in Twin Falls, Idaho, a very, very small town, middle of nowhere, where there was a similar story of a little girl. There were rumors about something untoward had happened, and there were, things swirling around about how Syrian refugees grossly exaggerated. The individuals involved, there were no Syrian refugees involved, no knife point, none of that. The story got picked up by a significant number of internet research agency accounts that really spread that story like wildfire. And you had people going after the prosecutor, the judge. And then in the bottom corner of the slide where it says Citizens Before Refugees, that was just one Facebook account that had really been promoting this idea that there was going to be a huge protest for citizens because the justice system was working against the American citizens, prioritizing refugees. Again, not something that was created by concerned Americans, but very much the internet agency's case. People with the presentation will, point out that, maybe they're weighing in on an issue that I care about. Like maybe if it's, something that is of societal relevance, like does it matter if there's disinformation that's, promoting something that is generally a truth that I believe in. And to that, I'll point to the bottom two in the bottom left corner, where we saw Russian accounts weighing in on the Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter protests here in the United States around police brutality. So weighing in on both sides of the issue, and again, it's pushing people to that post-truth. Maybe lose trust in the systems in place. There were really four main narratives that were kind of constant about what was happening with the justice system. And I think these are very similar to one we have seen play out in other countries. Those are things that these are things that people are concerned. It makes it all the more easier for disinformation to kind of and kind of promote those ideas. Essentially, the point though with all of those is that there's kind of few consequences. Like you either have one end, people just not believing in truth anymore. They're inundated with so much information that they don't know what to trust. They might not have the skills to trust it, but they're done with looking for valid and reliable sources of information. But the other side of it is there also are very real world consequences where you have people showing up to the streets in protest, sometimes getting violent. One of the key examples that we point to now is even the January 6th, what was by some considered protest, but then to insurrection at the Capitol was largely fueled by a lot of disinformation around what had happened with the legitimate election process. So again, those are just some of the concerns of how it's either people disengage with democracy or has that very real world kind of consequence attached. Next slide. I think the one after that, actually. The one more. Yeah. So we have a few reports that you can check on the CSIS website, but also happy to talk about them afterwards if anyone's interested. But the Beyond the Ballot report in particular is the one that details some of the various, the specific operations and narratives that were being promoted against the US justice system. Next slide. I'll just check time. So there are really a few key areas that we've centered our recommendations. One is just the idea of needing to do more research and awareness raising, and we do a lot of training for judges in the courts, which I kind of alluded to earlier. But I think that kind of touches on what a lot of people said earlier. The reason why you have to do that awareness raising is because fact checking alone doesn't really make a difference. People are like, well, I don't really care. I don't know. I mean, why does it matter? Why are you telling me this? So kind of talking about the nature of the threat, we've kind of found does get people to possibly be more responsible consumers of information. And then for that second part about training of the judges in the courts, we do have a focus on growing societal resilience. We think that is a big part of trying to counter disinformation, but there also has to be that training and things being done at the institution level to make sure that they're trying to be more transparent, more responsive. For the courts in particular, it's difficult because, when there's cases with minors involved or other sensitive topics, they might not be able to come out fast with the truth. But that's all the more reason they need to have plans in officials might not be able to. Let's just go through the last slide very quick because I know we're running.
We are okay.
We did? Okay, perfect. And the last big thing is we have this big project now looking to promote civic education as a national security imperative, a very broad understanding of civics, so civics with media literacy training, critical thinking, again, really trying to get people to be those responsible consumers of information. And it's not about teaching people, you have to believe this political party or you have to do, this or that. It's just giving people those tools, skills to be active and engaged citizens and have that civil discourse in a way that's productive for the democracy. So these are just two commission reports that came out recently. One was the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service. The other was the Cyberspace Solarium Commission. Neither of them were tasked to look at civic education. Both of them independently came to that conclusion that to deal with the threats that they were talking about, disinformation or otherwise, civic education had to be a very key part of that. Next slide. So, just very quickly, there's very concrete ways that civics addresses disinformation, creates a sense of national identity and shared values, reinforces this idea that democracy has that capacity to change. It's not that it's a static, perfect, concept or entity. And then finally, again, getting people to feel empowered that they can make a change in their democracy. Next slide. Oh, sorry, next slide.
Yeah, it needs time.
Over. So we have a series of programs that we've brought together national security leaders, private sector leaders to come and talk about why civic education is a national security imperative here in the US. So on the side we have our FBI director, Microsoft president, Supreme Court Justices Gorsuch and Sotomayor, former Secretary of Defense Bob Gates, and DHS Secretary Jay Johnson, among many others that we've had in this series. And again, all of them are really emphasizing that this is not a partisan issue. This is something we really need to focus on, and it's something we need to prioritize urgently now because the U.S. has, very much declined in its overall civic knowledge and awareness. A lot of what was discussed earlier about trust in institutions, trust in your fellow citizens, all of that is impacted by this kind of decline in civics education. So it's something that really urgently needs to be addressed here in the US. Next slide. And then I'll just leave with this last thing that we're focused on, but would love to have a conversation with anyone that's interested or has thoughts on how this idea plays out in your respective countries. But K through 12 education, I think, as you mentioned, is essential. That's a non-starter. We just have to make sure that that is the place where we start from, essentially. But after that, there really needs to also be that attention for adult populations because the threat is very much here. We don't have time to just wait for younger generations to catch up. So we've launched a project called Civics at Work that tries to get business leaders to sign on to this pledge that they will advocate for reinvigorating civics in their workplaces. They will, they'll engage with their workforces to engage in civics activity. They'll advocate for reinvigorating civics in general, and then they'll also support civics activities in their communities. So that is kind of our big lift now to kind of grow societal resilience and try to scale it quickly through the workplace. It is one of the more trusted institutions. When you see that, there's low trust in government or even the courts, unfortunately. The judges are kind of active allies in the civic space, but really employers are where there's still more trust. And so we think that that's one opportunity, at least here in the US, to kind of rapidly scale civics awareness and kind of get buy-in to this idea. But again, very excited to kind of continue that conversation and see how these ideas might be playing out in your respective countries. So thank you so much.
Are there any questions? Yes.
Please.
In not just the United States, but in many countries, the polarization where institutions and the funders for institutions that normally engage in civics are motivated by voting, one way or the other, or by policy or issues that are polarizing in this. So, do those institutions exist that do neutral civics?
Yeah, so that's been one of the, so we've actually been really relying on the K through 12 civics organizations that really have tried to be more of that neutral, make it nonpartisan, and really just teach the basics of, what are the 3 branches of government? What does civil discourse mean? What are the basics of media literacy? So the past year, we actually convened a series of workshops, roundtables, interviews with the business leaders as well as the civics leaders to kind of get them in a room to talk about what are those political barriers we need to overcome, what are the perception issues that we need to, because people will kind of immediately when they see one organization say oh, I think this is the issue that you're trying to promote or the angle that you're coming from. So the whole year was kind of spent developing this guide that we built out called the Civics for Content Providers Guide. And so it kind of maps out a few kind of key points that we're asking some of the civics partners that we work with to look at when they're adapting materials for adult audiences. And so they're working actually when they're starting to roll out some of these initiatives. But yeah, those civics programs for K through 12 are really the more trusted, less political ones, because again, if you go to the kind of ones that are already targeting adults, some of them already have that I don't want to say baggage, but they might have that kind of tag of being left-leaning.
They have a motivation. I mean, otherwise they're not. That's their point of existence.
So I would
they're
say,
funded too,
right,
for that existence. So then there's a pipeline for something else. Motivation for anybody to start anything. Right. So who's funding that?
Yeah, and so I would say if you look at Annenberg Public Policy Center, they run the Civics Renewal Network, and that's kind of the big coalition of these bigger national civic. It includes groups like the
Hopkins or USC.
No, so it's UPenn. But they include groups like the Capitol Center, the Supreme Court Historical Society, the Library of Congress, National Archives, and then a lot of big universities. So they are, in theory, more of these neutral spaces of education, and they're the ones that are kind of leading the charge for creating that content for adults.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So this could be a general question with Devi. Thank you for your presentation. For everyone on the panel, we've seen the studies that you've done, how there's been interference from Russia and foreign actors into the American system, and we see how we do in other countries. But there's going to be a rise. There's going to be new weapons and new tactics that foreign adversaries are going to take, or actors and maybe in other people from other ways. What have you seen? We've seen these AI-generated photos of the Pope and then Donald Trump. I mean, that was kind of scary. The next thing are going to be voice-generated AI. what is being, what are you guys seeing on the ground that are the next wave of these weapons, basically, for the lack of better terms, in a hybrid way? And what can we do? What are some steps being done to counteract those? If fact-checking isn't enough, what can we do as more as a society to counteract these new weapons that are rising up in the social media sphere?
Yeah.
So I know, I
It's
believe you
open for
might,
anybody. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I know you might be touching on some of that in your presentation, but I would say that all of what you said is generally of concern, and in terms of what's being done about it, I know that there's like C2PA, for instance, is like this new coalition with Microsoft, Adobe, and a few others, I think TruePic, that are really working on this like data provenance like issue of like how do you actually figure out where the various images or videos are coming from. That still kind of gets you to that fact checking sort of space, and at least for us, that's why we kind of landed on the need for civics education, media literacy, because we honestly just don't know like what is going to be the newer iterations that are coming or how to keep pace with the various things that might be coming up. And so growing that kind of stronger social or societal resilience to really deal with like whatever new iterations of disinformation tactics come out, that's kind of how our team at least landed on the civic side of things.
Can I make one observation?
Yes.
I think if you don't work with enough skills, you're going to be always outdated. In 1 week, it's gone. So you need to work with flexible models of media literacy that can embrace new technologies as soon as they are developing, at the same time they are developing. So when you work skills, I think it's a skill-based program. Needs to. That's my perspective.
I think in order to add a few things and then pass the floor to Aurra, please go ahead.
I think in the African context, it's interesting that you should bring that up because right now we're experiencing a huge brain drain. So a lot of our youth are being given a lot of scholarships to study abroad. So everything that they know about AI, is influenced, it's not in a local context. So I think our biggest challenge is around localizing what people have learned so that they don't just become tools for mass decision, for lack of a better phrase. So it's understanding, teaching the communities around, okay, what is this? How does it work? And then the young people who are outside, trying to teach them to either come back home or to localize whatever it is they've learned to a local context. But it's a very difficult position to be in, especially considering most of the people who understand it were not taught. They were taught outside. So it's a very difficult situation to manage, and most people cannot tell the difference between something that's AI generated and what's real. And our governments, most governments haven't caught on to it just yet. So I think we're maybe 2-3 years behind in terms of how it can actually be used to push any sort of propaganda or as a weapon against society. I'll put it in that way. But it's coming. And the biggest worry is that the people who can actually stop that are not here. They're on scholarships outside and they're living off the continent.
Diana?
I was gonna add also the human factor here, because I think I don't have a percentage, but from what I feel, it's a choice of believing, see, without double checking. So that's why I love the idea of civics as a national security problem, because we need to understand what the people fear, what the people are in need of, and those are the triggers that make them decide if the Pope image is real or not. So, and that's a very small example, but it's a choice, I think, also.
Aribowo wants to ask something. Please go ahead.
Yes, first of all, apologies. I'm actually driving right now because it's almost midnight over here, so I have to follow the session by also driving the car. So it's unlikely that you will be able to see clearly. Yeah, it's a great example of the way how people use digital technology in Belarus. Congratulations. But I'd like to add, agree with although I'm a fact checker, don't take this the wrong way, that it is true that fact checking, debunking is not enough. That is why at the moment, besides fact checking, there's also what the current trend in fact checking is called the pre-banking. So fact checking is basically debunking. It's a way to check whether the information is true or not. So it's not enough to just fact check. It's a way to check whether the information is true or not. So fact checking is basically debunking. It's a way to check whether the information is true or not. So fact checking is basically debunking. It's a reactive. We are trying to develop a way how to inoculate or immunize people by debunking. So, sorry, pre-bunking. So pre-bunking is like giving immunity to people. Unfortunately, one of it is by, instead of just teaching people how to fact checking, we actually have to teach people how to create mis or disinformation. Like, for example, using certain technique, like there's a feature in a very popular browser, the Google Chrome, it's called the inspect element. We actually teach people to do that because in Indonesia, at least, there are a lot of misinformation shared by manipulating the title of national media. That can actually be done in just 1 minute. So in a way, we're telling people, please be a little bit smarter. Do not be fooled by something that can be easily created within only 1 minute. So we have a class called the in Indonesia it's kelas kebal hoax, or in English it's translated as the hoax immunity class. We are teaching people on empowering them or not just able to do fact checking, but also the pre-banking class, since it's going to be election next year. We are also working with previously it was mentioned that civic need to be empowered, and that is what we are planning to do, or not just working with media and government agencies, but also like, for example, we are working with the what do you call it, the general election advisory and government, and we're hoping that although we're still running the fact checking, we're relying a lot on empowering the public to not just easily tricked by misinformation, but they can also be, the helping the fact checkers, helping the media and journalists to also become fact checkers, at least for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Aribowo. And if you allow me just to capture all the response, I will just mention that among the initiatives that exist, as actually John mentioned before, it is that through fact checking you can provide the sense to the people that they are not alone, that they have someone that can equip them with the necessary arguments, etc. And as it has been argued from everyone else in the panel, I will stress that we need to adopt a multi-angle approach. There needs to be a technological, there needs to be a civic education, there needs to be training continuous training of the people in order to understand the content. A very important initiative is Content Authenticity Initiative, where major news organizations and major tech companies work together. Among them is Trupic, Adobe, Google. Flag. But I think that now we have Dimitriadis, that actually the question asked, it fits very well with what Dimitris is going to present. Dimitris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let's try my luck with the clicker. First presentation that starts from the last.
Yeah.
Here. Okay.
Innovative.
Okay, great.
We started with dessert.
So yeah, let's start.
Cappuccino to dessert.
I would like to explore the future of truth. The future of truth in a very increasingly interconnected and of course immersive digital age that we live in. I want you to take a journey with me into the future. We will not go far away into the future. I have my personal time machine with me. I want you to imagine yourselves in 2029, not far back, in 6 years from now. You are walking from your house in a busy street. You are wearing your smart glasses because these will change and replace your phone, and you are browsing the news, you check your emails, and you are walking through the street, and then on the other side of a busy street, you see a problem happening. You see people helping a woman attacked by some people who look like they just arrived as refugees, so as migrants. And you hear, as you walk by through your augmented reality glasses, you hear saying things like, this is the third attack, enough is enough, how are we gonna cope with that? And you are walking and you go to the office and you leave your glasses and you enter a meeting in the metaverse with a virtual reality headset. You join some colleagues from Sao Paulo or other continent, and you finish your day. How are you gonna feel with this incident? Are you gonna be a little bit scared? One thing in this situation described is that the supposed attack on the woman is a fake disinformation, is an anti-immigrant political party, for example, that uses AR advertising tools to create a similar placement. So right now, immersive technologies like AR, VR, of course, AI, have the potential to deliver this information much more efficient. So we are already witnessing social splits and radicalization, and of course, with our talk and the problems with other channels. So with XR technologies, extended reality, the umbrella term under AR, VR, mixed realities, these risks become even more apparent. So the extensive data collection facilitated by these devices right now is the threat, because we have precise micro-targeting. We have manipulation and disinformation that can thrive through this synthetic media, as we call it. So tech companies, of course, in the absence of regulation, want to collect and share sensitive data. All of us are compromised, our individual privacy. We exchange some kind of privacy over convenience. We say, I will give you my name and surname and my marital status to remember the birthday of the third cousin, okay? Imagine the same in virtual reality when you have a 3D representation. These interactions in the metaverse will be even. So, in 2016, Cambridge Analytica claimed to possess 5,000 data points on every American voter. Okay, we saw with the aid of social media, the campaigns that helped Donald Trump with the election that year. We saw the similar scandal as regards the Leave and Brexit campaign. But right now, in contrast, an XR headset, we have more than 2 million data points on an individual. Imagine that when you wear this headset, you have on you 5 cameras, a LiDAR sensor that senses your environments, that scans your surroundings, knows what you see, your direction, your everything in just reality. In an immersive, a distinct distinguish of what is real or not in this environment is super, super difficult. Why? Because these kind of data points can be manipulated to fit in your current environment. This is not on Facebook or on TikTok. It's in your living room, okay? Which is super, super different. So we are speaking about the concept and future of truth. According to my opinion, there are these three types. We have the logical truth, 1 + 1 = 2. We have real events truth, which is facts. And of course, we have opinions. And everyone has opinion. And as we move into the future, the concept, the actual concept of a single, objective, undeniable, verifiable truth is potentially may no longer valid. We need to think the consequences for a democratic governance, because without truth, there can be without democracy. So when we are discussing about the future of truth, we need to understand what we need to do on a metaverse, when we have a 3D avatar, when we have telepresence, because now we are all joining with cameras closed, with mute microphones. In others, we can upload an avatar. We saw Zoom enabling avatar. We saw Teams enabling avatars. So when we prepare about the future, we need to take into account all these models. We need to use them, because if we still have, we will have big so trustless systems is nothing. We already understand chain is a technology for years now and a proven technology, and we understand that right now we are entering the era of Web 3. A lot of you in the room, you were present in Web 1. Web 1 is 1994 to 2004. AOL, Google, Yahoo, Netscape, the classic modem beeping sound era. Back then, we had a decentralized internet because we didn't have any centralized authority checking or controlling the content. So back then, the argument was open internet or AOL private internet, for example. Right now, after 2004 to 2024, we were at Web 2, all these companies like Meta, Facebook that renamed to Meta, Google, of course, YouTube, all these new blogs, all that entering into a new era that we are going to a decentralized way. People must own the data. There is a phrase that is don't trust, verify. So you can have your mobile wallet like your internet browser and you own your data. And every transaction, because we are speaking about transactions, every transaction without giving or someone scraping your data, you need to authorize that. And these systems, these permissionless systems, are going to create a new state of trust. Because if we speak about the future of truth, we need also to speak about the technology of trust. So by harnessing the power of blockchain, of course, open source, there is a huge conversation about if OpenAI must open source the model of GPT-4 or stop developing for the next 6 months. According to my opinion, if they open source the model, also bad actors will have access to this code and create millions of bots speaking to each other and spreading misinformation. So we need to be very careful on what we open source and how we build a new system of trust. So what shall we do? We need to continue integrating technologies, of course, prioritize truth, transparency, and design educational programs to help citizens to navigate, and citizens of all ages to navigate to this new, faster cyber citizens era. So, in conclusion, the future of truth lies in the intersection between immersive technologies, AI, and our ability to navigate in the evolving digital landscape. So we need to sit here and see, not now, but in the future. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
It was too shocking.
So now, yes, now.
What would you say is the human role? Because what you spoke about is the technology. So where does humanity fit?
I had the last slide that I removed it because I think that this is not the case. My last slide on every presentation is the space between. We need to understand the space between human and technology. But right now, when we speak about the future of truth, we need to focus on the technology part. Why? Because right now we are raising our kids in a society where physical and digital has the same value. If you have a kid and has a virtual sneaker or 1,000 Robux in Roblox, this is actual value for this kid. For the 30 years old and the millennials and the baby boomers in the room is just no, it's actual reality. So this actual reality has also an aspect because this is immersed on this reality. So the human role is always the space between humans and technology. But right now we need to create policies and understand the technology that is running faster than the human mind.
Thank you, Dimitris. Thank you, Aurra. Anyone else?
I have a comment. Thank you, everyone. One thing that, and it kind of was sparked by your conversation, your presentation about civics. Disengagement, not hyper-engagement. So it's this very fine balance between getting people involved, but not letting that civil disobedience turn into outright chaos. I'm thinking of Paris riot streets. It's something that is passionate to you. How do you stop complete and utter chaos in the streets? How do you get people involved to come out to a protest, but not have that protest become violent?
So I feel that that's part of the situation that we're all faced right now, is how you get people involved, how you get people to care. I don't want to say, but not care too much. Technology, I'm sure, has a role in that. Does anyone have any thoughts on where we find that balance, or even if there is a balance?
Yes, please.
Civics, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick thought on that. I mean, because, and I don't know if this is a full answer to that, but at least our thought is that's also why we have to focus on what the institutions can do to make sure that they're being responsive to people, or that they're showing ways to be transparent. Because as you said, like, you want people to be not only engaged, but feel like if they go through the process, change will happen. And like it might not be fast, and that's part of where the civics comes in. Like, you have to teach that, you know, it's not going to be the second you say it, you're going to see immediate change, but there is a process in place. The system is going to work. But yeah, we're still struggling with how you side, how do you, like, knowing that, make the institutions find ways to be responsive to people, so that, you know, you don't have situations where people just like don't trust that the institutions are going to work fast enough, so they do resort to violence or kind of go beyond what's considered like normal protest or civil civic behavior. Yeah.
This comes also to the concept of trust. If people trust the system, they will not go out to the streets in order to be heard. So through technology, we can create a system that can be trusted. And of course, so we can use tools, the digital tools, the new immersive tools, chatbots, to civic engagement in order for people to be heard and feel a little bit of trust, because of course there's economic pressure, there are a lot of problems out there that we cannot just solve it magically with technology. If we do a small step and building this trust layer with existing technologies, I think that we are a bit one step forward.
I also think, I mean, I think your question like assumes that the current paradigm is working for people, and we just have to get them to fit into it. But I mean, I think most people don't feel the social contract or the paradigm. Most people are, let's say, most people empowered. People that don't have that are under the subjugation of a lot of the things we're talking about, it doesn't work for them, and they want to dismantle the current system. And so maybe AI is a place to, you know, scenario a shared future could look like, what a different future could look like. But I mean, in a way, there has to be a dismantling to rebuild, or a parallel. I think without, I mean, AI, the thing is really tangible. It's not in government spaces, or it's not in, you know, it's not like people are. Scenario, yeah, but scenario planning, I think now, like, to scenario plan and create an attractive parallel future that could be taken on, would be some kind of model to be able to say, look, this works in the metaverse, or it works here. You know, how do we apply it? But I mean, at the end of the day, if we can't just like have two different like parallel realities. We have to. The zeitgeist has to change. The people, the culture has to change.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking our friend from Belarus left, that parallel Belarus that he was talking about. It's literally a parallel country is being created. Yeah.
It happens in Abkhazia has it. I mean, a lot of places have a parallel government. So how do you shift it to be that? Like it needs to be a power change. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to change the power, and that's what we can go around in circles. But without that, it's going to be really hard.
This is actually the question is totally related with the topic of this session as well. So people tend to go on, they cannot actually channel their demands through the existing system. So this is why they found that as a way actually to demand more. This is why they go to the extreme. This is why polarization prevails. or in addition to that, it is fueled through disinformation. So now I think that based on this question, we can say that the quest is to engage with democracy. It would be with all various means that it can from actually civic education, from youth participation, from all these means that we had the opportunity actually to present. And so in this, I found it very extremely important and very interesting session, and I hope that you agree with me. And now, if I'm going to wear the hat of the professor, I would like to start asking questions. What have you learned? So, would be more than happy to have your thoughts and contributions to this, because as we have said from the beginning, we want to engage people that they are with us. And we would value a lot your thoughts about these sessions or any input. No? Okay.
She had a question.
Okay,
you wanted to add a comment for the last one? Yeah.
I did have something I wanted to add. I think never have we lived in a time where we have so much personal autonomy. Technology has encouraged individualism, personal autonomy, taking control of the information, how you learn, how you think, how you interact with people. And there's also kind of like a very slight borderline danger of devolving. Okay, if you look at what makes AI so incredible, is AI is learning human nature, right? It's learning how humans ask questions, how humans think, how humans formulate thought. And it's like we have stopped doing that. We have stopped looking at empathy as emotional intelligence, because that's very key when you're dealing with people, because now people are so independent, and so my phone is who I am, and everything I put on social media is who I am, that we're devolving to a sense that we forget. This is why I keep bringing up humanity. I'm all for technology. I am the guy when it comes to tech. I love tech, you know, but I think in our reliance on tech and in focusing so much on the future of technology, we are losing sight of what AI has caught onto, which is how humans think and how humans feel and process emotion. A lot of what we do is driven by emotions, very emotive, you know, even right down to the most logical opinion. It's emotive. It comes from a place of feeling. So I think it's important to not lose sight of that and let AI take over that thinking for us, and to keep that at the forefront, even when tackling questions like yours, where you say, okay, but you know, how many psychologists do we have in the room? You know, how many people who specialize in empathy do we have in the room? You know, how many people are really looking at the human condition and how technology has affected the human condition? Because it's changed. We're not the same. We're still using principles that, you know, we were taught in psychology in university, but it's changed. Technology has changed the way we think, the way we feel. So I feel like that really needs to be a center point. At every intersection, you really must understand and not lose sight of the human condition.
I would actually shift even the paradigm into Asia. For example, China has been developed a lot in technology and developed a lot of tools. To open it up as a tool of participation. We have to have this in mind, that at the end it is the society that it will decide how open and transparent it wants to be. So before ending this session, I would like actually to give an applaud to all our speakers. Please join me in this applaud for a huge one to the people that actually managed to set up this event, which is Vlad, Mariana, Arthur, and Juliana. Okay, the other one.